Hello, everyone. I'm Adam with AEW Maine Treasure Adventures. Today, we're going back in time to the great 1947 fire of Bar Harbor. We are going to one of the most unique estates in Bar Harbor at the time. First, let's go over some backstory of this place. This is called the Archbold Cottage. Anne Mills Archbold. She was born in New York City, New York, on November 24th, 1873. Anne's parents were Annie Eliza Mills of Pennsylvania and John Dustin Archbold. John Archbold was one of the earliest oil refiners and became close associates with John D. Rockefeller. Mr. Archbold took over many of the business elements of the Standard Oil Company, which allowed Rockefeller to focus on his charitable works, and was educated in Paris, France, and Florence, Italy. In 1903, she was painted with her dog by Frederick William MacMonnies. The portrait is now in the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C. Anne Mills Archbold started construction of Archbold Cottage in Bar Harbor, Maine in 1903. The cottage was finished in 1904. The cottage itself was designed by famed architect Frederick Lincoln Savage and inspired by villas Archbold had seen in Tuscany, a region in central Italy. It featured a terrace garden with fountain and 12 stucco arches overlooking a forest, mountains, and the ocean. From the principal bedroom, a spiral staircase led to a tower with panoramic views. We are going to head up to our estate, which is now part of Acadia National Park. I'll talk a bit more about her and her family as we walk around the same grounds that she did back in the day. John Archbold's wealth allowed his daughter to travel when she reached adulthood. She was kind of like Paris Hilton of the day. Newspapers would follow her to find out what she's doing next. Her name appeared on ships' lists throughout the 1890s into the 1900s. In 1906, she traveled to the Far East, where she was one of the first Western women to visit Tibet. While there, she met Amar de Rollis Saunderson, an Irishman. Amar was the son of Colonel Edward James Saunderson, who was a member of the English House of Commons and led the Irish Unionist Party there. The seat of the Saunderson family was Castle Saunderson in Ireland. Anne and Amar Saunderson got married in 1906 at the clubhouse of Cutterhunk Island in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts. The couple honeymooned in Europe. The couple traveled to Ireland, and in October, they were celebrated on the estate at Castle Saunderson in conjunction with Colonel Saunderson's birthday. It would be the last birthday he would celebrate as he would pass away later in 1906. Amar bought his own estate called Foxleys in England at the end of 1906. He pursued his interest in agriculture and had a dairy farm. In 1907, their first child, Lydia Ann, was born. In 1908, the newspapers were full of news about passengers arriving on the ship Lusitania. The Saunderson family were passengers, but Lydia and her 2 pet lion cubs were the stars of the show. Baby Lydia, or Princess Lydia as the papers dubbed her, was seen playing on the decks of the boat with 2 lion cubs who had been captured alive by Anne while she and her husband had been hunting big game in Africa. When the ship docked in New York, the cubs had to remain in quarantine on the docks and were eventually taken to the Bronx Zoo, where they were the star attraction for many years. The Saunderson family continued to grow throughout the next few years. Amar Edward was born in 1909, and a second son, John Dana, was born in 1911 in Bar Harbor, Maine. The youngest child was a girl, Meloria, who was born in 1912. The family lived on the Foxlease estate in England for a while, still traveling to Bar Harbor and all over the world. A few years later, Anne's dad, John D. Archbold, suddenly became very ill. He died in December of 1916 of appendicitis. After his death, papers at the time tracked Anne's journey across the Atlantic to arrive for the reading of her father's will. The will was very simple, leaving 1/3 of his property to his wife Anne and the remainder to be shared equally between his 3 surviving children. Tax documents filed in Colorado show that John's 180 shares of stock in the Continental Oil Company held a valuation of $99,900. Anne's share of just this portion of the estate was $10,779.20. Additional shares sold in Wisconsin brought Anne an additional $43,000. In the end, the total estate was valued at having a net worth of $38,239,895.68, of which Anne inherited $9 million. Just to give you an idea of what that would be today, his total net worth would have been $1,127,778,721.54. Her inheritance would be $265,429,816.51 after calculating for inflation. Anne would get divorced from Amar Soderson in 1922. American papers claim that she and her children were being held virtually captive by her husband, and that she was rescued along with her children on a Standard Oil steamer. The divorce was certainly bitter, and Anne may have stolen her children from England as they had been made wards of the court to prevent her from taking them from English soil. Anne had retained Foxlease in the divorce, and in an effort to sever all ties with England, she offered the property, which includes over 60 acres of land, to the Girl Guides. The Girl Guides were the American version of the Girl Scouts. The Girl Guides acquired the property in 1922 when the estate was gifted to Princess Mary, who was a sponsor of the Girl Guide Association. Anne gave the estate to Princess Mary as a wedding present, who then presented it as a trust to the Girl Guides. Today, Foxlease is still a training and activity center for Girl Guides in the United Kingdom. After her divorce and returning to the United States, Anne and her children took up her maiden name after legally changing it back to Archbold. None of the children used the Soderson name ever again. Anne went by Mrs. Anne Archbold for the remainder of her life. She rented an estate called Greystones, close to Rock Creek Park, when she first returned to Washington, D.C. after her divorce. Anne lived at Greystones for 6 months and made plans to purchase land west of town. She settled on a 60-acre tract of land on Reservoir Road to the west of Georgetown. She hired a female architect, Josephine Wright Chapman, to design her new home. She called it Hillendale. Anne used the Hillendale's estate to train German shepherds as guide dogs for the visually impaired and others to be used by police forces. Her children were often in society papers, especially Lydia, who was captain of the Washington polo team and was a fashionable debutante. Hillendale was not her only home. She still had houses in Maine and Rhode Island, and frequently traveled to Florida, New York, and the Bahamas. Anne Archbold joined the National Woman's Party and was a proponent of the Equal Rights Act. in 1923. She was even photographed with a group of women who were about to invade the offices of the senators and congressmen from their states to ask them to vote for equal rights. She also joined a delegation that petitioned President Harding directly and followed in her father's footsteps. She was an affluent heiress who donated money, land, and time to the causes. She donated to hospitals in the D.C. area, Maine, and New York. Some of the causes that she supported included occupational therapy, social welfare programs, and the Gollinger Hospital. In 1947, her beloved Bar Harbor home became part of the hundreds of homes that were lost to the Bar Harbor Great Fire of '47. She was heartbroken and decided not to rebuild, but to give the property to Acadia National Park. As we walk around the ruins, you can see some of her sculptures around the garden pond, a number of pieces of burnt cast iron bed frames, among other hidden gems. When the building started to burn, the walls folded in on each other. You can still see between the stucco walls with the wire that was used to hold the wall together. Her staircase leading to the front door is still here, with some of the pipes and what's left of the chimneys. Her outdoor patio is now covered with grass and some trees. The outline of the house I can still follow, and her old road coming into the property with a large driveway around the garden pond. It's pretty amazing to be here and know what it used to be. I had a deer walk up to me and didn't want to leave while I was there, so I had to name her Anne Mills Archbold, or you can refer to her as Mrs. Archbold. Anne died at her winter home in Nassau on March 26, 1968, of a heart attack. She was 94 years old. Her funeral was held at the Hillendale Estate in Washington, and she was eventually buried in Ivy Hill Cemetery, near her son John's Upperville, Virginia estate, which he called Foxlease Farms. Her children have also since passed away. Lydia Ann Archbold Foote, 81 years old. Amar Edward Archbold, 48 years old. John Dana Archbold, 83 years old. Meloria Archbold, 76 years old. May your ventures be guided by the lessons of your past, illuminating new trails for a future yet unwritten. The best way to honor the past is to make the future something worth remembering. Until the next adventure, AEW out.